Welcome back. Today, we're diving into this explainer looking at the incredibly dramatic, really high stakes evolution of Indian philosophy from the 1800s right up to today. We're going to trace how a massive 3,000-year-old tradition went from facing a literal existential crisis under colonial rule to transforming into a modern intellectual powerhouse and, eventually, becoming the billion-dollar global wellness export we all know today. It's a fascinating journey, so let's just get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture India around the year 1850. There's this intense existential tension brewing. On one side, you've got immense pressure from colonial administrators and Christian missionaries who are routinely just completely dismissing Indian thought as primitive or irrational. But on the ground, they were constantly bumping up against a highly rigorous, living, 3,000-year-old philosophical tradition. The British Empire essentially ran into a massive administrative hiccup, right? This tradition was way too impressive to easily dismiss, but definitely too alive to just ignore.
So this brings up a massive, high-stakes historical puzzle for Indian thinkers at the time. How exactly do you defend a tradition without freezing it in place? They obviously couldn't just surrender to the empire, but they also couldn't rigidly lock down their ancient texts and turn them into some dusty museum piece. And what makes this specific era so incredibly fascinating is that the Indian response wasn't a static defense at all. Instead, it was a radical transformation that completely changed their philosophy forever.
Now, to really grasp this period, we have to define the intellectual battlefield they were fighting on: Orientalism. This was the Western academic tendency to exoticize and misrepresent Eastern traditions as mere relics of the past, rather than vibrant, living systems. Indian thinkers were caught in a brutal dual pressure cooker. They had to fiercely prove the profound depth of their tradition to the West, while simultaneously, and this is absolutely crucial, actively reforming genuinely indefensible internal issues back home, like caste discrimination and practices like sati.
And this brilliantly illustrates the first major response, which we call the modern Renaissance. Early thinkers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy tackled this head-on by arguing that the ancient Upanishads actually teach a rational monotheism, essentially stripping away later superstitious corruptions. Then you have Rabindranath Tagore, a Nobel laureate, championing a powerful humanism that unifies the individual and the universal self. And Sri Aurobindo, talk about a massive shift in thought. Through his integral yoga, he argued that consciousness itself is evolving, meaning liberation isn't about withdrawing from the world, it's about completely transforming it. They basically took ancient texts and forged them into modern tools for social evolution.
A towering figure in all of this was Swami Vivekananda. He introduced what's known as practical Vedanta. He championed the profound reformulation that Advaita Vedanta is not about denying the world at all. No, it's the universal foundation for service, social action, and human dignity. Think about 1893, when Vivekananda walked onto that stage at the Chicago Parliament of Religions. That was the electric moment where Indian philosophy looked the West right in the eye and demanded intellectual respect on a global stage, powerfully arguing that the self in absolutely every person is divine.
Building on that idea of applied philosophy, we get to Mahatma Gandhi and his concept of satyagraha, or truth force. What's incredibly fascinating here is that his nonviolent resistance wasn't just some clever political tactic. It's actually a deeply metaphysical claim about the absolute power of truth. Gandhi essentially took the Bhagavad Gita, read it straight through the lens of Advaita Vedanta, and applied its classical metaphysics to build a revolutionary political movement. Ahimsa, or nonviolence, wasn't mere passivity. He viewed it as the most demanding, active practice a human being could possibly undertake. Of course, this conversation is absolutely incomplete without Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Ambedkar forcefully argued that the caste hierarchy was completely incompatible with human dignity. He spent his entire life orchestrating a vital, brilliant philosophical takedown of Brahminical Hinduism and its justifications for inequality. To achieve this emancipation, he founded Navayana, or New Vehicle Buddhism. Just weeks before his death, he led a mass conversion of hundreds of thousands of followers to Buddhism, completely reframing the Dharma for social and political liberation.
Section 2, the contemporary wave, shifting toward direct, individual experience without gurus or paths.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the teachings of someone like J. Krishnamurti. Raised from childhood to literally be a world teacher, he pulled off one of the most shocking moves in philosophical history. He completely dissolved the massive institution built around him. His philosophy is a rigorous, unsettling rejection of all institutionalized paths. No path, no guru, no tradition. He insisted that we must observe the movement of our own mind directly, and that true freedom requires absolute freedom from the known.
Then we encounter a moment of sudden, radical stillness in the tradition. Who am I? This simple yet incredibly profound question is the absolute core of Ramana Maharshi's practice of Atman Vichara, or self-inquiry. He wasn't asking this as a riddle. It's a complete, highly concentrated neo-Advaita investigation. The idea is you trace every single thought back to its source, and whatever remains is what you actually are.
And speaking of highly concentrated teachings, just look at Nisargadatta Maharaj. This guy was not an academic. He was a working-class man who sold hand-rolled beedi cigarettes in Mumbai. Yet by following a single instruction from his guru for 3 years, he delivered one of the most uncompromising, pure, non-dual teachings in recorded history, famously captured in the classic book I Am That. It brilliantly shows how pure philosophical insight can emerge so powerfully, completely outside of any formal academic or institutional structures. Now, as this philosophy expanded globally, the picture naturally became wildly complex. You have figures like Osho, who acted as a provocative synthesizer with a massive global organization, but also drew significant ethical controversies. You have Sadhguru, leveraging massive mainstream media scale, with his philosophical depth debated. And Eckhart Tolle, an important Western transmitter drawing heavily on Advaita and Zen. It's a massive mix of serious philosophy, massive scale, and undeniable controversy. All of these aspects are part of the story. Section 3. The Global Wellness Export, a billion-dollar industry built on fragmented philosophy. So the crucial point is right here in this contrast. Today, our modern practice often looks like gym yoga postures and app-based mindfulness. Don't get me wrong, these are incredibly popular and highly useful. But originally, these were rooted in the rigorous, intense theories of Samkhya metaphysics and Buddhist Vipassana. You can easily crush a 20-minute meditation on your phone today and never even realize the profound ancient philosophy that makes it all work. There's a saying, fragments travel. Sometimes a fragment is enough to open a door. The fact that modern wellness separates the philosophy from its original context isn't necessarily a failure. Honestly, a fragment of mindfulness in a gym class might be exactly what someone needs to get started. But what you should really take away from this explainer is that the whole door is still there. 3,000 years of profound arguments, fierce logic, and dedicated sages are waiting right behind that door if you ever decide you want to open it further. Let's just take a step back and look at the vast historical map we've covered here. From the Upanishadic sages way back in 1000 BCE asking what is real, to the Vedantins in 800 CE intensely debating the nature of the self, right through the massive transformations of the 1850 modern Renaissance to the 1950s contemporary wave of self-inquiry, all the way down to today. Notice that none of these thinkers entirely settled the question, and honestly that is exactly the mark of a vibrant, living, breathing conversation. The conversation is 3,000 years old. It's also happening right now, and you are part of it. I really want to encourage you to go read the primary sources we've talked about. Pick up Vivekananda or Krishnamurti or Ambedkar. Sit with an idea long enough until it asks you something back. What is real? Who are you? The journey is waiting.